Hi everyone, this is Marianne and welcome to my channel. Today is the 5th day of the new year, but we are also still on the 12th day of Christmas because day 1 is Christmas Day itself. So today we are going to look at the 12th and last pen of Christmas from everythingcalligraphy.com. Pen number 12 comes to us in this plain, simple white cardboard sleeve that is open at both ends, and there is a black box inside that can be slid out. It has this textured finish all over, but it has no markings on the outside, and it opens up like a clamshell. Inside is the pen tray that is of a beige color, and we have some branding from Christoph. This is the Christoph Model 66 in garnet, and the box also contains a warranty card. The pen has a lifetime warranty. And here is the pen itself. Once again, it's the Christoph Model 66 in garnet. The material is very intriguing. It is a deep red color with purple undertones, and the barrel of the pen and the cap of the pen are in a circular shape except for this part right here that is flat because it has the engraving that says Christoph Model 66. But that is the only part of the pen that is flat. All the rest have a circular shape to them. The pen has a very beautiful color. It is a dark red with purple undertones, and if we look closer we can see that it's composed of random chips that have a sort of iridescence to them. I have seen this finish on a lot of higher end fountain pens and some of the vintage ones. I think it's very beautiful, so even if the pen is really just technically one color because it's made of the same material all throughout, the pen does not look like just one solid color all throughout, so I think that's pretty cool. Another thing that you might have noticed about this pen is that it does not have a clip. Some people prefer having clips on their pens. Some people don't really care whether their pens have clips or not. But I think that a clip really does not go well with the design of this particular fountain pen. And not putting a clip on this pen just adds to that vintage desk pen feel to it. If you have seen photos of this pen online, you probably have noticed that it's a very long pen. When capped, it is a little bit more than 16.5 centimeters long. When uncapped, the pen is a little bit over 16 centimeters long. And when the cap is posted, the pen becomes 17.5 centimeters long. Here is a close-up of the nib. There are some decorative engravings, and we have the letter F, which is part of the Christoph logo, and below that we have a very small letter M, which stands for medium because that is the kind of nib that we have. And this is how the underside of the nib looks. It's pretty straightforward. But even though it is a very long pen, as we have measured earlier, it feels very comfortable in the hand. As you can see, I tried holding it in my hand capped, and even when I let go of the grip with my fingers, the pen stayed in place in my hand and didn't topple over backwards. However, as is my preference when writing with fountain pens, I prefer the pens to be uncapped, so I tried holding the pen in my hand without the cap posted, and as you can see, it is a very long pen. It extends way over beyond my hand, and the position of that flat spot that has the Christoph Model 66 words engraved on it is such that it would face the one using the pen. So I think that's a pretty nice design touch. And when the cap is on the pen, the cap does not obscure the engraving on the pen. This section has the exact same material as the barrel and the cap of the pen, and The pen comes with a converter already pre-installed inside the pen, and it's really just your regular converter with a piston mechanism inside. It's pretty snug, and I think it's the proper fit for this fountain pen. The converter does not have any agitators inside of it, and it does come with a narrow black neck. There are no markings at all in the converter. To test out this pen, we are going to use the De Atramentis Christmas 2012 scented ink. I do have a full bottle of this, but right now I'm on vacation, so all I have with me is a sample vial, and the scent has already dissipated because I've had this ink bottle for a while, but the color is really pretty, and I think it is a perfect match to the color of the pen that we are looking at right now. We are also going to be using the same paper that we have used for the entire series, which is the Midori MD-A5 notebook. I have a review of this notebook in my channel, and I will link it down below. It's also available in Everything Calligraphy. And once I started writing with a pen, right upon the first stroke, I was completely impressed with how it performs. It is a very wet writer, and it is very smooth. And what we have here is a medium nib, which in principle writes more wetly than a fine nib. But of course, it varies. Some fine nibs write more wetly than some medium nibs, but this particular medium nib writes very wetly. It's how I think a reliable, consistent medium nib should perform. In my writing sample, I wrote down there it writes like a true European medium nib, because when I was starting out in my fountain pen using life, which was I think in 2005, 2006 or something like that, I really wanted to get that shading in fountain pen inks, so I decided to purchase medium nibs only, and I did get that shading, and I really loved medium nibs. However, as I went along, I went to finer nibs because my handwriting is really quite small, so using fine nibbed fountain pens made my handwriting look better. But writing with this particular medium nib made me remember how much I really liked writing with medium nibs, and it made me miss those years and months in which I was really getting into fountain pens for the very first time. So there was a lot of excitement, there was a lot of memories at that time, and there were a lot of medium nibs and shading inks. So this pen reminded me of that time, and it really just made me happy. And just look at that shading. Of course, it helps that for this writing sample, I am using an ink that already has good shading, but using this medium nibbed pen that writes very wetly just really adds to the shading even more. The pen writes very smooth, almost glassy, but not quite. It has no tooth, but I can feel a very tiny amount of drag, which I like, because I don't like my pens to be glassy smooth, because I feel insecure when a pen is glassy smooth, because I feel that at any moment while I'm writing with it, it's going to fly off the paper and off of my hands. It's really just a personal preference. So this pen is almost glassy smooth and has no tooth, but it has a little bit of drag. I did that little test that I like doing by dragging the fountain pen across the paper and trying to see if it writes using just its own weight, and this pen definitely delivers. As you can see, it writes consistently even when it is just writing on the paper using its own weight. And if a pen can pass this test, this is usually the mark of very good ink flow and a nib that is tuned properly to write perfectly straight out of the box. And then I did the usual short straight lines again, vertical lines and horizontal lines, and the usual figures of 8. The first line was done with holding the pen just lightly over the paper, and the second line was done pressing a little bit more on the paper, and I could tell that the nib has absolutely no flex. It is quite rigid, but that is my only complaint about this pen, which is redeemed by the wetness and the smoothness and consistency of this pen. And I really cannot get over how beautiful the shading is. The shading is extremely pronounced, and I think I did the right decision in using the ink for this pen, not just for the shading properties, but also for the color. I think it really just adds to the entire look and the entire experience of writing with this pen. I really enjoyed writing that sample page, so I decided to use this pen to write in my journal. For my journal, I am also using the Midori MDA5 notebook, which I purchased from Everything Calligraphy. And I also have a video on my channel about how I actually journal the parts of my entries, and I will link that down below. But usually on the first line I write the date, and on the second line I write the time in military time, and then the day of the week, and then the location where I am writing that journal entry. And I have set the camera closer to the page, and in this particular angle you can really see the pronounced shading of this pen. Some parts of my handwriting strokes are really much darker than others, and some are much lighter than others. Like for instance, on the third line of the journal entry, the first word is in, and the letter I is very light, and the letter N is extremely dark, and the word lovely on the same line, the LOVE is very light, and the LY are very dark. That is the shading that I always aim for when I write with fountain pens. I think one of the major contributors to my enjoyment of writing with fountain pens is seeing the page fill up in front of my eyes and seeing it look more and more beautiful as I go along. I never really felt the need to draw anything on my journal pages or to decorate my journal pages, because I think that fountain pen writing already looks so very beautiful. I think it is a work of art into itself, and I don't really have the perfect handwriting. It's kind of lopsided, and I chop up my cursive, but the shading alone is a redeeming factor to my handwriting, and that is one of the reasons why I really love writing with fountain pens, because it makes my journal pages look so artful. I consider myself quite lucky that I am writing my very first journal entry with this particular pen and ink combination. Now, because it is a very wet pen, I hope you notice that the page that I have written on is a little bit warped, as you can see from the shadow that is cast by the lamp. And if you compare it to this completely blank one that is still completely straight, this one has a little bit of a warp to it, because that page right there is extremely wet because of the very wet writing from the pen. It's not because I pressed down on the paper, because I never press down on the paper when writing with fountain pens. And that is always the effect of very wet pens on paper, and it doesn't matter really what your paper is, because paper, when it gets wet, tends to warp a little bit. So if you have a very wet fountain pen, that's going to happen to any paper that you use the pen with. Thicker papers tend to warp less, but thinner papers tend to warp more. I myself really don't mind. I think it's a little pretty that the paper is warped because of wet fountain pens. But I am just strange that way. All in all, my conclusion is that I really like this pen. I think it's well worth the money, and I think that I can appreciate the vintage vibe of the design, not just because of the material used for the pen, but because of the shape of the pen. It has that elongated barrel, but it's not too over the top because it doesn't even have a clip. So I think it's simple enough, but at the same time not ordinary at all. And the most important thing is that it writes really, really well. So I'm not really surprised that this pen won an award. It won a design award by Pen World Magazine readers for Distinctive Daily Writer in 2015. And that is what I think of the Franklin Christoph Model 66 in Garnet from everythingcalligraphy.com. This is our 12th and last pen of Christmas from everythingcalligraphy.com. It is available at the link that I will post down below. Everything Calligraphy delivers to all addresses in the Philippines via private courier, and they also deliver internationally. And that is it. This is the end of the series. I've had a lot of fun doing all of these videos, and I hope you had a lot of fun watching them as well. Thank you so much for joining me. If you have any questions, just comment down below on any of my videos, and I will certainly get back to you as soon as I can. And while you're here, I hope you look around my channel. I'm sure you will find a lot of videos that may interest you as well. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time, bye!